I'm really shocked.
Well, you never told me you wanted to go.
I know.
You tell
I
him,
know.
you don't tell me?
For over 2 decades, he was the king of daytime television, a talk show titan who brought his signature brand of no-nonsense advice into millions of homes every day. Dr. Phil McGraw wasn't just a host, he was a cultural phenomenon, a name that became shorthand for getting real. His show dominated the ratings, and his catchphrases became part of how we talk. But after 21 seasons, the empire came to a sudden, stunning end. The official story? He wanted to pursue new projects and reach a bigger audience. But behind the carefully crafted press releases, a much more personal and heartbreaking story was unfolding. The real reason Dr. Phil walked away from the show that made him a household name wasn't about ratings or network politics. It was about a crisis hitting much closer to home. It was about his wife of nearly 50 years, Robin McGraw. And it was about a tragic diagnosis that had been silently shaping their lives for years, a diagnosis that would force them to rethink everything. This is the story of what was really going on behind the scenes, and the private battles that led to a very public goodbye. For 4,000 episodes, she was the silent anchor in a storm of human drama. The impeccably dressed woman in the front row, watching her husband dissect the lives of his guests. Robin McGraw was more than just Dr. Phil's wife, she was a fixture, a symbol of their solid partnership in a world of chaos. To the public, she was the picture of grace. But beneath the surface, a private battle was raging, a struggle with health issues and past traumas that would eventually collide with her husband's demanding career. This wasn't some single, sudden illness that makes headlines. It was something more insidious, the slow, crushing weight of it all that finally became too much to bear, forcing one of TV's most powerful couples to make a choice they never saw coming. To really get the size of Dr. Phil's departure, you have to understand the empire he built. Philip Calvin McGraw didn't just stumble into television, he was basically shot out of a cannon by the most powerful force in daytime TV, Oprah Winfrey. After a successful career as a psychologist and co-founding a trial consulting firm, his appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show in the late 90s were a massive hit. People were hooked by his direct, folksy, and often confrontational style. He wasn't there to hold your hand, he was a strategist, a man who promised life strategies to fix broken families and pull people back from the brink. In September 2002, with Oprah's blessing, the Dr. Phil Show premiered and it was an overnight juggernaut. For the next 21 years, it was an unstoppable force. The format was simple but revolutionary. Dr. Phil would bring on guests struggling with everything you could imagine: addiction, infidelity, out-of-control teens, you name it. He'd listen, sometimes impatiently, before cutting through it all. With his famous questions, "How's that workin' for ya?" or "Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy?" He positioned himself as the voice of reason in a crazy world, a father figure who wasn't afraid to tell you the hard truth. The show's impact was huge. It was consistently one of the top daytime talk shows, pulling in millions of viewers daily, even near the end. Dr. Phil became a multimillionaire, a best-selling author, and the producer of spin-off shows like The Doctors. He was so big he became a target for parody, a sure sign you've made it. But for every critic who said he was oversimplifying psychology, there were millions of loyal fans who saw him as a lifeline, and through it all, there was Robin. From the very first taping, she was there in the audience, her eyes locked on her husband. It became a trademark of the show. At the end of every single episode, Dr. Phil would walk off stage, take her hand, and they'd leave together. This simple act became a powerful symbol. In a show all about brokenness, their seemingly perfect, nearly 50-year marriage was the goal. They were a team, but Robin was far from just a silent partner. Over the years, she built her own brand. She became a #1 New York Times best-selling author, launched a popular podcast, I've Got a Secret, and founded a successful skincare and lifestyle brand. She also started a charity, When Georgia Smiled, to help victims of domestic violence. She was a powerhouse in her own right, but her public identity was always tied to her husband. She was the calm presence that grounded the show's chaotic energy. Her persona was one of strength and grace. But as the years went on, the pressure of keeping up that image while dealing with her own private struggles began to take its toll. The foundation of the house that Phil built was strong, but cracks were starting to form where no one could see them. The idea that Dr. Phil ended his show because of one shocking medical diagnosis for his wife is the kind of story tabloids love. It's clean, dramatic, and easy to sell. But the truth is a lot more complex and, in many ways, more heartbreaking. The diagnosis that ended an era wasn't a sudden illness. It was a lifetime of pain, trauma, and chronic health issues that all came to a head. It was a diagnosis of perspective, a realization that life is too short to live under a microscope, especially when your life is filled with so much private suffering. One of the most painful battles Robin has faced has been a lifelong struggle with folliculitis. While that might not sound life-threatening, for Robin, it has been a source of constant, significant pain. She said she inherited it from her mother and has been fighting it her whole life. Folliculitis is a skin condition where hair follicles get inflamed, often leading to small, painful, pimple-like bumps that can sometimes turn into sores that won't heal. For Robin, this wasn't just a small inconvenience. She's talked about how it affects her face, especially her chin, and that it's genuinely painful. Dealing with a chronic, visible, and painful skin condition is tough for anyone. But for a woman on national television for 2 decades, whose looks were constantly scrutinized, the psychological toll must have been immense. Every day, she sat in that front row looking poised and perfect, while secretly dealing with a condition that caused her physical pain and, likely, a lot of self-consciousness. This was on top of other issues she had with her self-image. For years, Robin was intensely self-conscious about her eyebrows, admitting she had overplucked them so badly they never grew back. It might seem like a small thing, but to Robin, it was a big deal that affected her confidence. She said she'd never wear her hair up because of it. In 2011, she had an eyebrow transplant, a procedure she later said changed my look. She also had surgery to correct ptosis, or drooping eyelids. While these procedures helped her confidence, they point to the constant pressure she felt to maintain a certain image in the public eye. But the most life-altering event for Robin, the one that you could truly call a tragic diagnosis of the soul, was the sudden death of her mother, Georgia. This single moment changed Robin's entire view of the world and planted a deep-seated anxiety about health that would follow her for the rest of her life. Robin was incredibly close to her mom. Then, when Robin was just 32, the unthinkable happened. Her mother, who was only 58, called her on the phone. "I feel funny," she said. Robin, worried, asked her, "What do you mean by funny?" But before her mom could answer, she was gone. She died, right there on the phone, from undiagnosed heart disease. The shock and trauma were unimaginable. Robin wasn't just grieving her mother, she was horrified by the fact that her mom had never once been to a doctor. She was so busy taking care of everyone else that she completely neglected herself. In that moment of loss, Robin had a revelation. She vowed she would not let that happen to her. She told herself, "I made the decision that I would always take care of myself so I could be here for those I love." This became the central trauma of her life. It made her hyper-aware of her own health and her family's. It was, in a way, a diagnosis of her own mortality. This wasn't something a doctor writes on a chart, it was an emotional scar that shaped every decision she made. The fear of a sudden, undiagnosed illness became a constant shadow. This profound loss, combined with her own chronic health problems, created a heavy burden. The serene, confident woman in the front row was living with a constant, low-grade fear, and that was the real, tragic diagnosis. It wasn't one disease, but a combination of physical pain, old trauma, and deep-seated fear that made the relentless pace of public life harder and harder to bear. The McGraw's story is a complicated mix of public success and private pain. Before we get into how these personal crises and mounting professional pressures finally led to the end of the Dr. Phil show, take a second to subscribe. We dig deep to bring you the real stories behind the headlines, so hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. By the time the 2020s rolled around, the pressure on Dr. Phil and his TV empire was coming from all sides. The carefully built world of no-nonsense advice was starting to crack, both professionally and personally. The decision to end the show didn't happen in a bubble, it was the result of escalating controversies and the constant weight of Robin's struggles. The empire was starting to unravel. Professionally, the show was facing a growing storm of criticism that was getting too loud to ignore. For years, mental health experts had raised ethical questions about the show's format. Many argued that holding therapy-style sessions in front of a TV audience was exploitative. The fact that Dr. Phil had let his license to practice psychology expire back in 2006 became a major point of criticism, with people accusing him of being an entertainer playing a therapist. The allegations got worse. A 2018 investigation by Stat News and the Boston Globe featured former guests who alleged the show's staff enabled their drug and alcohol use. One guest, Todd Herzog, who was struggling with alcoholism, claimed he was given a bottle of vodka before his appearance. The show denied it, but the story stuck. There were also claims that the show pushed guests toward certain treatment centers that, in turn, bought a VR product sold by Dr. Phil's son, Jay. On top of that, Dr. Phil was facing lawsuits. A former employee sued him for false imprisonment, claiming he trapped 300 employees in a room and yelled at them over a media leak. He was also accused of creating a toxic workplace full of fear and intimidation. The infamous 2016 interview with actress Shelley Duvall, where he was accused of exploiting her obvious mental health crisis, sparked huge backlash and remained a stain on his reputation. And Danielle Bregoli, also known as Bad Baby, sued McGraw for recommending she go to Turnabout Ranch, a facility where she and another guest alleged they were abused. All of this professional heat was happening at the same time as the personal crisis at home. Robin's health battles and the trauma of her mother's death were always there. Imagine the stress, sitting in that audience, projecting an image of a perfect marriage, while carrying the weight of chronic pain and the fear that a health crisis could strike at any moment. This is where the two stories collide. On January 31, 2023, CBS announced the Dr. Phil show was ending after 21 seasons. In his official statement, Dr. Phil sounded ambitious. He said, "I have been blessed with over 25 wonderful years in daytime television. But while I'm moving on from daytime, there is so much more I wish to do." He talked about his grave concerns for the American family and wanting a bigger platform. That was the official story, a smart career move. But when you look at it through the lens of their personal struggles, the decision looks different. Is it possible the stress from all the controversies made Robin's health issues worse? Did the relentless grind of a daily show just become too much for a couple already dealing with so much? It seems likely the decision was twofold. Dr. Phil probably did want a new challenge, but ending the show was also a crucial escape hatch. It was a way to step away from the daily grind, the ugly headlines, and the intense spotlight, but the biggest twist was still to come. Dr. Phil wasn't really saying goodbye. He wasn't retiring. He was doubling down. He announced he was creating his own media network, Merit Street Media, based in Dallas-Fort Worth. And the flagship show? A new primetime series, Dr. Phil Primetime. This wasn't an ending, it was a rebrand. He was giving up his daytime throne only to crown himself the new king of primetime. The unraveling wasn't a collapse, it was a strategic demolition to build something new. On April 2, 2024, Merit Street Media launched, hitting a reported 80 million homes. At the center of it all was Dr. Phil Primetime. Dr. Phil was back, but the big question was, what's different? Is this really a new chapter, or is it just the same old story in a shiny new package? The new network is a huge undertaking. Based on a 5-acre campus in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Merritt Street is more than just Dr. Phil. It has news programs, true crime shows with people like Nancy Grace, and other lifestyle content. Dr. Phil said he wanted a network for Main Street America, one that just presents the facts and lets people make up their own minds, a clear shot at mainstream media. Dr. Phil primetime asterisk itself feels both familiar and new. The core is the same, Dr. Phil on a stage, in front of an audience, giving his blunt advice. But the topics have shifted. He still covers family drama, but now he's leaning hard into hot-button issues like immigration, school curricula, and the toxic influence of social media. He's also interviewing more political figures, including a controversial sit-down with former President Donald Trump. To his fans, it's a great change, a voice of common sense. To his critics, it just looks like he swapped one kind of sensationalism for another, catering to a more conservative audience. And what about Robin? She's still right there, a constant, supportive presence. Their partnership, which has survived almost 50 years of marriage and tabloid attacks, is still the rock. The couple has famously stood together against false reports about their relationship, even suing outlets that published lies. Their bond is incredibly strong. So, let's go back to the original question, is Dr. Phil saying goodbye because of his wife's tragic diagnosis? The answer, when you peel back the layers, is more complicated than the rumors suggest. There was no single, terminal illness that pushed him into retirement. That story is a myth. But it's absolutely true that Robin McGraw has faced serious and tragic challenges. She's battled a painful lifelong skin condition, dealt with public scrutiny, and carries the deep trauma of her mother's sudden death from a preventable, undiagnosed disease. This collection of struggles is a diagnosis of a different kind. It's the diagnosis of a life lived under incredible pressure, both public and private. It's the kind of wake-up call, born from loss, that tells you time and health are the only things that really matter. The decision to end the Dr. Phil show wasn't a direct result of a doctor's report, but it was almost certainly influenced by this bigger, more personal diagnosis. It was a choice to change their lives, to leave the grind and the controversies behind for something new, on their own terms. This new chapter with Merritt Street Media offers them a different kind of life. They're still in the spotlight, but now, they control it. They've moved from Los Angeles to Texas, which itself signals a change of pace. The new venture lets Dr. Phil keep working, but maybe without the same level of stress. And for Robin, it might be a chance to support her husband in a more manageable, less draining way. The story of Dr. Phil and Robin McGraw is a powerful reminder that what we see on TV is almost never the whole story. What do you think about Dr. Phil's move from daytime to primetime? Was it a smart career pivot, a response to a personal crisis, or a mix of both? Let us know what you think in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you appreciate us going deeper on these stories, please like this video and share it with a friend. In the end, the story of why Dr. Phil left his iconic show isn't the simple, tragic tale the rumors painted it to be. It's a much more human story about ambition, pressure, and partnership. It's the story of a TV titan who built an empire, faced a storm of criticism, and chose to reinvent himself instead of just fading away. And it's the story of his wife, a woman who showed the world a vision of perfect strength while privately dealing with chronic pain and the echoes of a devastating loss. The tragic diagnosis wasn't a medical file, it was a life audit. It was the slow realization that the path they were on just wasn't sustainable anymore. Ending the Dr. Phil show wasn't a surrender, it was a strategic retreat to a new battlefield where they could set the rules. With Merritt Street Media, Dr. Phil and Robin McGraw have started an ambitious new chapter. They've swapped the chaos of LA for the heart of Texas and the rules of network TV for the freedom of their own empire. But as they charge ahead, the real question is whether this new beginning can truly give them what they seem to be looking for. A way to balance massive public ambition with a deep, personal need for